Yes, the space between us is scary. It is odd and at odds. An area unoccupied where all things exist. But the space between us is also liminal, a threshold between old and new. And so, in this space, anything is possible. To grow without gathering, to connect without congregating, to create without convening, which means the space between us is sacred. Yes, the space between us is scary, but scared and sacred are so close, and we need to make space for both.
Reasons why I'm still in bed. Because it's been a rough year and it's only June. Because it's been a rough week and it's only Monday. Because it's been a rough day and it's only 10 a.m. Because lately, all of my favorite memories are here. And sometimes you have to turn the day off, turn it back on again, and hope it's fixed. Welcome, friends and colleagues. This is a moment. This is a difficult week, part of difficult months, part of a difficult year. And we need Shabbat more than ever. So with that, I want to introduce myself. My name is Rabbi Jessica Minnen. I'm the rabbi and director of Jewish learning at OneTable.
My name is Tori Greene, and I am the field manager in Miami at OneTable.
And we are here because we believe that ending your week with intention, with good food, good wine, good people, is good for you. Full stop. It's good for you if you're Jewish. It's good for you if you're not Jewish. It's good for you no matter where you are in the world or what you're facing or bringing to the table. Shabbat is good for you. It is an opportunity to lean in to the issues that are challenging us, and I want to name them. Okay? This is safe space, my friends. We are all colleagues. So let's talk about pandemic and distancing and loneliness and isolation. And let's talk about the privilege that we have had, if we are lucky enough to be able to distance and not be frontline and not be considered essential workers. And let's talk about the murder of Black Americans in our streets. Let's say their names and honor our responsibility as Jewish professionals and inheritors of a Torah of peace to say their names. And let's honor the fact that so many of our friends and colleagues in the Jewish professional world have been furloughed or laid off in the past 8 weeks. There is a lot that we are holding. Sometimes we need to lean in and use Shabbat as an opportunity to elevate the conversation, and sometimes we need to step back and take a little bit of care for ourselves. So we're going to talk for the next 30, 40 minutes or so about that, about Shabbat as a radical act of sacred self-care, whether you're doing that by showing up and gathering virtually or with your housemates, or God willing soon in person, or whether you're doing that virtually, or it's a time to simply step away and unplug and give yourself a break from the job of being you. I have a tremendous amount of gratitude to each of you for showing up this week. Share some learning with you. We're going to spend about 10 minutes on this first text, and then we're going to spend another 10 minutes or so on a second piece of learning in small groups.
And Jacob blessed them. Each according to their abilities, he blessed them. Vayevarech otam, ish asher kevirchato, berach otam.
So let's take a look at this verse. Let's contextualize it for a minute, because it's not one of those common scenes that we talk about a lot in Jewish professional life. We're not at the burning bush. We're not wrestling angels. We are actually at a scene where Jacob, Israel, is blessing each of his sons in turn. He blesses them each according to their abilities, is the translation in most English Torah. He blessed them. So if you look at the line in Hebrew, and it's a short line, so let's look at the text in Hebrew. Let's really dig in. Vayivarech otam, and he blessed them. Ish asher, each one. Kivarchato. This is kivarchato is what stands out for the rabbis. So the Mefarshim, the sages, the commentators look at this and say, wow, the word blessing, the root barech, is in here 3 times. Vayivarech otam ish asher kivarchato. There it is again, barech otam. Why does it have to be repeated so many times? What are they actually trying to say? And now I want to highlight this word, kivirchato, according to, and the English translates it as according to their abilities. But let's look at the actual Hebrew. The Hebrew says kivirchato, according to his blessing. So what does it mean to bless someone according to their blessing? That doesn't make any sense. And there is no better Torah, my friends, than the Torah that does not make sense. The rabbis love when there's this kind of ambiguity. So let's fast forward a couple thousand years, and I'm going to ask Tori to read the Nefesh HaChaim. Now, really quickly about the Nefesh HaChaim. We're jumping from a biblical source, and we're skipping Rashi, and we're skipping Rambam, and we're not even going to stop at Ramban, although I love him. We'll do that another time. We're going to go all the way to 1780. We're going to go to the beginnings of the Musar movement, the movement around Jewish ethics that's really imbued with a lot of Hasidus, and it's imbued with a lot of Kabbalah. And the Nefesh HaChaim is living in Belarus around 1780, between 1780 and 1820. This text is codified. And he is thinking about this verse, and he says,
Blessings are not ambiguous spiritual gifts. Rather, they should add abundance to what is already there.
Okay, let's pick that apart for a second. A blessing is not an ambiguous spiritual gift. Well, honestly, and let's be fair here, when you think about a blessing, you usually think about an ambiguous spiritual gift. I bless you with parnasa. I bless you with health. I bless you with the ability to be calm. And those are all wonderful and beautiful things to bless someone with. But what Nefesh HaChaim is saying here, and this is really radical, so buckle up. A blessing isn't ambiguous. You already are the blessing. When you receive or give a blessing, you're not giving or wishing for someone something external to add to their life, to add to their experience. When you receive or give a blessing, you are actually adding to the abundance of what someone already does, who someone already is. This is a transformational take. Because what the Nefesh HaChaim is saying is that you are enough. And blessing is an opportunity to amplify the enoughness, the holiness, the wholeness that is already in you. That is blessing personified. What's the temporal version of this? I believe that the experiential learning here is Shabbat. I believe that as Jewish professionals, we not only have an opportunity, but we have a responsibility to step into Shabbat on as regular a basis as possible and use it to amplify the blessing in our life. Now I'm going to stop there for a moment. And I want us to utilize this small group. And I want to acknowledge that we have exactly the right people here. There's 19 people here, which is exactly the right number to hear from each other. What's coming up for you when you think about blessing in this way? When you think about yourself as a blessing in this way, or Shabbat as a temporal blessing in this way? I invite you to take yourself off mute, reflect for us and with us, or if you'd rather, make a comment in the chat so that we can have a couple of minutes of discourse here.
I'm just struck by you saying that we have a responsibility to have a Shabbat as in the way of nurturing ourselves, in the way of really counting our blessings and knowing, being able to have this time and space to be able to reflect on our own lives as a blessing. That's so powerful, and that really triggered something for me. Thank you.
Annie, you're leading into our next text. I'm going to read what Annie posted here. A thing that's coming up for me, no, it's perfect. You always want one of your students or one of your participants to lead you into your next text so that it's completely seamless. And since this is JPro and we're Jewish professionals, we can lift the veil as we're talking. It's ideal, actually, when that happens. What if I want a blessing for something that I don't see in myself yet? What if I want to amplify calm and this is not Annie, this is me now. What if I want to amplify calm and I'm feeling anxious? What if I want to amplify discourse and I'm feeling really isolated? A personal example of this right now is that I want to be in conversation and solidarity. And I have one Black friend. I have one Black friend. And I'm feeling a lack of blessing in myself and in my life and in the choices I've made that have resulted in my social circle. And Annie continues, what if I want a Shabbat of peace or wholeness, but I'm feeling broken? So our God in Judaism is a God of joy, right? And you can bring all the quotes and all the stories and all the verses about the God of war and the God of justice, and I will counter those with quotes and texts about a God of love and a God of joy. And one reason I know this to be true is because our God, and I say this whether you believe in God or not, okay? Sisters don't care if you believe in God or not. I'm talking about theology. I'm not talking about a personal belief system. So if you tuned out when I said the G word, tune back in. Personal theology and Jewish theology may intersect and they may not. But if you consider a power greater than yourself or a connectivity greater than yourself, that's what I'm getting at here. And that God, the God in the Torah, is a God who loves brokenness. And what does that mean? That we are taught that brokenness is an invitation and an opportunity. You see this in the mystical teachings around creation, the holy vessel that is broken. What is tikkun olam? Tikkun olam isn't out there, la, 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 repair the world, although that's a lovely thing to do. Tikkun olam comes from the story about this holy vessel of light that is broken on the day of creation. And it's our job to find the pieces. That brokenness gives us what to do. We find our purpose. And I want to go back to what Lori said. We can find our blessing in that. There's an element of responsibility here. So I want to go to our next text. And this is the text. I'm going to introduce it for a few minutes, and then we're going to go into small groups, into small group chavruta. So, and take with you all the elements. Take with you the two palms. Take with you the idea of self and blessing of time. And now let's figure out what we do when there's brokenness. I'm going to ask Tori to help us out here again.
So much depends upon us and our intention. All of those intentions fill the Kiddush cup to overflowing. They are the moments of brokenness that we bring from the week that has passed. They are gathered into the cup of blessings, and they are lifted up in the moment of Kiddush.
Okay. I want to name that this is not an easy text. This is Dr. Eitan Fishbane. I don't know if we have any JTS grad school education folk on the call. He's a professor of Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism at JTS. He's also a genius. He is the son of a genius. A quick book recommendation. His father, Michael Fishbane, wrote a book called Sacred Atonement. If you are interested in fine-tuning your modern Jewish philosophy and approach to theology, I cannot recommend this book enough. It's called Sacred Atonement. Dr. Fishbane is writing a book that this quote comes from about Kabbalah, about Jewish mysticism, and the way that we can use strands of Kabbalah and threads of the Zohar, which is very thready, that Zohar, that we can pull threads from the Zohar to enrich our own, not only our own Shabbat practice, but our day-to-day living of lives as Jews. And so what Annie was asking is, what if I'm going into Shabbat with that sense of brokenness? What do I do with it? And Dr. Fishbane quotes the mystical text and says, actually, what you're supposed to do is recognize the sacred mission, the sacred basis, essentially, of brokenness. That if your kavanah, if your intention coming into Shabbat is an intention of despair and sadness and brokenness, that is as sacred and as holy as joy and oneg, happiness and levity. And Shabbat is a place that is big enough, that sacred space is big enough to hold all of that, whatever you're bringing to the table. And we use that line a lot, whatever you're bringing to the table. And this text actually reframes it in the moment of Kiddush. And you know, Kiddush, Kodesh, holiness, that it's lovely to think, and I love me a good Kiddush wine, and I like that that's the image here. But Kiddush isn't actually about the wine, right? I mean, you should have a nice wine, it's Shabbat. But it's actually using wine as a conduit to sanctify time. And what if we expand that and say, with these mystical roots, right? We expand that and say, Kiddush doesn't just sanctify wine. Kiddush doesn't just sanctify the time of Shabbat. Kiddush takes my brokenness and honors it. This cup can hold all of that, and I am going to raise it up and offer it up. And gosh darn it, when I put my glass down, I have let go in some way. And I think that's my take on where I want to go with this, is that by raising it up, I'm able to let it go. So what we're going to do is give you a few minutes in Chavruta to just talk about what this is bringing up for you. The songs, the poetry, the verses, the reflection on blessing, the idea of Shabbat as a responsibility to acknowledge our own blessing and our brokenness. So we're going to divide up now into our Chavruta groups, and Tori has pasted this text in the chat so that you can see it in your small groups.
About how much time will we spend in the room?
This is going to be about 7 minutes.
Beautiful. You're in groups of 2 or 3. We'll see you in a little bit. We're all back.
Hey, we are all back. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We're going to ask to hear what conversations went on, what came up for you, what you might have talked about if you are willing and open to share, and we hope that you are. I'd love to let you know a little bit about where I'm at in all of this and sort of how these texts have hit me. And we were actually having a really lovely conversation right before this, and we were talking about this idea of perfectionism and this fear of perfectionism that freezes us, right? Because we think, if I do this, then I might insult somebody. I might do the wrong thing. I might make a mistake. And then we're frozen. We say, so I just won't do it. When in actuality, what happens when we make mistakes is we learn and we grow. And so that brokenness is, within that brokenness is the only place that we can actually truly achieve wholeness, because we need to fill those gaps with our education, with our learning, with our mistakes. One of my favorite songs is Rascal Flatts' "God Bless the Broken Road," because that line, "God bless the broken road that led me straight to you," while that song is a love song, that concept of saying, thank you for all the things that have happened in my life that have led me here. And those are the good things and the bad things that have led me here. And so I hope for all of us that we lean into the bad, acknowledge that bad is, we don't want bad. But if we have bad and we experience the bad and we experience and we make mistakes, that we can learn from all of those things. And it's the humility and the understanding of saying, I made a mistake, so let me move forward. That's where the growth and that wholeness comes from. And so I'd love to hear from other folks what you might have spoken about, what you discussed. If you want to unmute yourselves, if you want to write it in the chat, however you feel most comfortable.
Hey, hello everyone. My name is Tali, she, her pronouns, but in our group, we really focused on the brokenness a little bit and just acknowledging how powerful and wonderful that is to come so, so genuine in that sense, and that it's okay, and giving yourself that power to be okay with it, or that acceptance, that permission, to be okay with it.
Hi, I'm Julia, she, her pronouns. One of the things that my Havruta partner and I talked about was the idea that you can't pour from an empty cup. And so Shabbat as the time to fill up your cup, and even like over the course of Shabbat, to take that time to do some healing through ritual, and thinking of this idea that, like, in order to do that really important work that we all have to be doing right now, to use Shabbat to fill up your cup so that you're taking that full cup into the week, and that through the ritual, doing some acknowledging of that brokenness and also repairing of that brokenness, to then, even in like the larger conversation at dinner, just think about like the structure of Shabbat, to then engage in that challenging conversation and not being afraid to, like Tori was saying, I think that was so beautiful. Like, we'll say one more sentence and I'm done. Realize I'm talking a lot. I'm a part of an alumni group of graduates of my college, and I was sort of backing away at first when the conversation started to go about what's happening in the world right now with the protests. And then I was like, no, like as a white woman, I need to be calling in other white women who are saying ignorant things, or who are, who are saying things that just pushing women of color into marginalizing their voices. And so I was at first afraid. I was afraid to engage in that conversation. Then I was like, no, I have to do this work, and being vulnerable, I think, is important for that, and how I can use this Shabbat to refill my cup to continue to do that work.
Yeah, I could say I'm Hillary, and I was with Julia, so we had some similar thoughts. But I think also I talked about how like I didn't know that like blessing meant enough, kind of like Rabbi just talked about. And I feel like this week, like there's just so many feelings of like I'm not doing enough, or like feelings of guilt, and like just this like call in, but like afraid to call in because of not knowing what to do, and this like perfectionism you talked about. So I just think it's interesting to think about like using blessings to feel like enough, or like even just knowing that conversation could be enough.
Thank you all. Thank you for stepping in and sharing and showing up. Today is Thursday, and tomorrow the sun will set and we will usher in another Shabbat. My question for you is, thinking back over the past 38 minutes, what elements might you incorporate into your own sacred self-care practice? One of our tenets at OneTable is that you can do Shabbat right now. You can do it tomorrow night. I don't care if you've never done it before, you can do it. You're going to bring the right stuff. Even if you don't know the words and you don't have the objects, you actually do. We have resources to help support you to do that. But the underlying message here is, what are you going to bring from your week, from your day, from the past 38 minutes? So I want to just be really clear that the way that this was structured, this half hour, it was really intentional to begin with music and to honor the blessing and the brokenness that music can elicit in our own practice, and to think of ways that music can be a part of our Shabbat. To honor and elevate the role of poetry, whether it's topical poetry that speaks to a particular moment, or it's your favorite Mae Swenson poem. Shabbat can hold that, and poetry is a beautiful way of creating your own liturgy on Shabbat. And of course, we have Torah. We have Torah study, whether it's a verse from Genesis or a piece of Musar, of Jewish ethics and values that's 2,000 years older. Whatever your Torah is, bring it. And then we have blessing. And I want to dig back in and invite you to dig back into the idea that there is blessing in you. What do you want to amplify about your own blessing on Shabbat? And finally, this idea of ritual, that all of our Shabbat rituals have a purpose. They don't exist for the sake of themselves, whether it's candlelight or the wine of Kiddush or the challah or the gratitude of Birkat Hamazon. And when we imbue those rituals with meaning, when we look at the Kiddush cup and say, not only is this a vessel of joy, but this can be a vessel of brokenness as well, and what does that mean? ask those questions and think about what elements you want to use and incorporate in your own Shabbat, not next month, not the next time you run a program for wherever you work, for you, for yourself, for Spencer and Pat and Lori and Tolly and Hillary and Kayla, for you tomorrow night. And I want to pass it off to our incredible partners at JPro, who are going to have some concluding words for us.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Laura Herman. I'm the Program Evaluation Manager at JPro Network. I want to give a big thank you to Rabbi, Jess, and Tori, who have taken the lead on this session. And this session has evolved a little bit since we planned it a couple of weeks ago. And I feel that you have both held the space for me, and if I may speak on behalf of the group, for us to reflect at this moment of time, both about the current events and the systemic racism and the protests and COVID and what all of that means for us, and also framing it in terms of Shabbat and thinking about ways that we can incorporate that type of practice into our lives differently. So I want to give you a very big thank you and express my gratitude for that. As a quick mention before we conclude, I'd just like to share a couple of more words about JPro. JPro is the organization that is by, of, and for the approximately 80,000 people who work for Jewish community organizations across the United States and Canada. In addition to this program, which is part of our JPro online series, we have a couple of other things that are coming up, and my colleague Erica will likely chat you out some links if we're so coordinated today. The first is Well Advised, which is a free 1-hour advising session that is now available to everybody who worked or currently works for the Jewish community workforce. The sessions are ongoing and can be requested online. We're also offering a Jewish meditation series that is on Tuesday evenings and Thursday mornings. Those will continue throughout the month of June, and they are drop-in, so you can register at any time and feel free to participate even if you haven't been before. And lastly, there are a couple of more spots available for our most popular masterclass, which is called Task Management and Delegation with Less Stress with Diana, Task Management with Less Stress with Diana Bloom. The class starts on June 16th. All of those feel sort of like a very logistical way to and to sort of start concluding our time together. I would also like to share that OneTable has just produced a guide entitled Solidarity Shabbat, and we will be sharing that with you in a follow-up email with some resources and the recording of today's session. So I'll be sure to let you have that link. And now I'm going to pass it over to our experts from OneTable to share one last concluding message.
The last concluding message is thank you. Good gatherings begin with intention and end with intention, and there is no more sacred kavanah than music. So we're going to invite everyone to turn off their video and just take a moment to listen. We're wishing you an early Shabbat Shalom. Be well, take care, and stay strong.
In the sky, rhythm swinging side to side, and there is a pause. one collective breath that's shaken us throughout the cold. And the earth started to heal, and the people started to feel, and in our hearts replaced with love. And in the time we all were here, and in time we all were here, and in time the earth was green, and in time we all heal. Shabbat shalom.
Thank you so much, Tori.